Hello, I am Coach Irene. I have been teaching English language for more than 5 years. In this video, we're going to be looking at clauses. What is a clause? A clause is a group of words in a sentence that contains a subject and a predicate. Let me explain in a way that you will understand. Let's say there is an individual called clauses, and these clauses is someone that likes to take two things along with him everywhere he's going. And these things are called subject and predicate. The subject is something very important he must take along with him. And that subject must either be someone or something. Again, he must also take predicate along with him. And that predicate must either be an action or a description. Having understood what a clause is, I would like you to know that clauses are essential building blocks of sentences and come in different types, serving various grammatical functions. Let us look at types of clauses. Number 1, independent clause. Number 2, dependent clause. To begin, let us talk about independent clauses. An independent clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate and expresses a complete thought. An independent clause can stand on its own and can function as a full sentence. Looking at the word independent, it tells you of something that can stand on its own. An independent clause contains a subject and a predicate and can stand on its own without needing any help. Whilst the dependent clause contains a subject and a predicate, however, cannot stand alone. It always requires help. Just like the first instance I gave, let us look at clauses as two individuals. The first person is independent, can stand alone, can walk all by himself without needing any help. Whilst the second is physically challenged and will always need help to stand. So independent clause is the one that doesn't need help to move around, whilst dependent clause is the one that needs help to stand. We'll talk about dependent clauses as we proceed. For now, let us talk about independent clause. Let us look at the meaning of a subject and a predicate. A subject is the doer of the action or the topic of the statement. It could be a person, place, thing, or animal. Whilst the predicate is the action being performed or the state of being. It tells us what the subject does, experiences, or is. Essentially, it contains the verb and all the words that provide additional information about the action or state of the subject. They include verbs, objects, modifiers, complements. For example, the cat slept on the couch. The subject here is the cat, and the predicate is slept on the couch. This sentence is a complete sentence, and it is an independent clause, as it contains a subject and a predicate. Another example would be, I love reading my books. The subject here is I, and the predicate is love reading my books. As you can see in this sentence, it expresses a complete thought. It doesn't rely on another part of the sentence to make sense. Independent clauses can combine with other clauses to form more complex sentences. We have compound sentences. In this sentence, two independent clauses are joined by a coordinating conjunction like and, but, or, so, yet, for, or none. For example, I wanted to go outside, but it started raining. In this sentence, you can see that I wanted to go outside and "It started raining" are two independent clauses. However, they were joined by a coordinating conjunction, but it can also be used to form complex sentences. A complex sentence is formed with an independent clause joined with one or more dependent clauses. For example, although it was raining, I went for a walk. I will be talking more on different types of sentences in my next video. For the purpose of this video, let us continue to talk about clauses. Let me share with you a quick tip to identify an independent clause. When you see a sentence or make a sentence, ask yourself, does this clause have a subject and a predicate? Does it express a complete thought? If yes to both, it is an independent clause. Next, let us look at dependent clause. A dependent clause, also known as subordinate clause, is a group of words that contain a subject and a verb but cannot stand alone as a complete sentence. It depends on an independent clause to form a complete thought. Like I said earlier, let us imagine that a dependent clause is someone who is physically challenged, and so it needs someone who is independent or fit to help him whilst trying to move around. In this context, dependent clause depends on an independent clause to form a complete thought. Otherwise, the sentence or the thought won't be complete. Let us look at the characteristics of a dependent clause. Number one, it contains a subject and a verb. Like an independent clause, it has both a subject and a verb, but it lacks a complete idea. For example, although she was tired. In this sentence, we have the subject she and the verb was. However, the sentence is incomplete. I bet you would have wondered, what's next? Although she was tired, and so? So the sentence is incomplete. This makes it a dependent clause. However, if I say, although she was tired, she went to the market. She went to the market is an independent clause, and although she was tired is a dependent clause. Now the sentence is complete with the help of the independent clause. Number two, dependent clauses are introduced by subordinating conjunctions. They include because, although, while, since, when, and more. For example, we stayed indoors because it was raining. Now, the dependent clause in this sentence is because it was raining. And the independent clause is we stayed indoors. Notice to introduce the independent clause, we needed a subordinating conjunction, which is because. Therefore, dependent clause are introduced by subordinating conjunctions. They could also be introduced by relative pronouns like who, whom, whose, which, that. For example, I admire people who work hard to achieve their goals. Here, the dependent or subordinate clause was introduced by who. They can also be introduced by relative adverbs like when, where, why. For example, she smiled when she saw the surprise party. As you know, the subordinate clause was introduced by when. Let us look at types of dependent clauses. Number one, adverbial clause. They function as adverbs, modifying verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. They are introduced by subordinating conjunctions like because, although, since, if, while, when, after, before, and more. For example, she stayed home because she was sick. Number 2, adjective or relative clauses. They function as adjectives, modifying nouns or pronouns. They are introduced with the pronouns or adverbs who, whom, whose, which, that, when, where. For example, the book that you gave me is amazing. In this sentence, that you gave me is modifying the noun book. Number 3, noun clauses. They function as nouns and can act as a subject, object, or complement. They are introduced by words like what, why, how, that, whether, who, whom, and more. For example, I know that she is coming. Let us look at how to identify a dependent clause. Number 1, look for a subject and a verb in the sentence. Ask yourself, does this clause have both? Number 2, check if it makes sense alone. If it doesn't form a complete thought, it's dependent. Number 3, look for subordinating words like because, that, who, or when. If not, it is not a dependent clause. With this, we have come to the end of this lesson. I trust that you got value. Do well to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our exquisite channel. I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.